Hi, my name is Athena Ireland and we're talking about AI products. Today I invited Michael. He is a head of AI in a company called Tradeteq. And what are they doing? They are predicting credit events. Hi Michael.
Hello Athena, how are you? Good to see you here.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
So, why we decided to choose this place?
Well, I think Barbican is a nice place to walk with a conversation. It's a piece of 1960s and vintage brutalism, built in 1980s here in London, in the middle of the city. I think it's actually a very good metaphor for the machine learning as it is. A lot of the models we use are actually models from 1960s, which just used to be dismissed and not really working for many years until 5-8 years ago. Suddenly the GPU progress and the neural network training progress suddenly made them feasible. It's very much like Barbican, we built a long time ago, disliked by most people because of brutalism, but now it sits very harmonically within the city of London, within the very modern city of London. So it's a very nice piece of London, which I really like.
Okay, thank you. Let's have a walk.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, the first question which I always ask, what is your background and the background of your co-founders?
Yeah, my background, I come from Moscow, Russia. Did my PhD in mathematics there, then another one in Amsterdam, and then decided that academic life is not for me. Worked for a few years in Amsterdam, then moved to London, worked not far from here at what was then ABN AMRO. Traded derivatives, structured derivatives, was a quant in many places. And then left Merrill Lynch in 2015, and then met a couple of my former colleagues on the street a couple of years later, and they told me about this exciting new startup they're just setting up back then. Decided to join them, never looked back after that. What we do is financial technology. Our two co-founders met as well at Merrill Lynch as colleagues. The area which we serve is trade finance, which is probably the last non-modern piece of finance. Non-modern means that a lot of the documents that people sign to execute trade finance probably would be familiar to a Venetian merchant in 15th century. That's really not modernized piece of finance. I think it's changing now quickly. What we are doing is trying to open up trade finance to non-banking investors. At the moment, if you are a non-bank investor, say professional investor, pension fund, insurance company, you can buy almost any product a bank can invest in. You can buy residential mortgage, you can buy private loan, you can buy shares, venture, whatever you want. Trade finance is probably the last remaining asset class where it's almost 100% banks only, and we're going to change that. To change that, we are creating a new market, a market where investors will be able to buy and sell chunks of trade finance loans. And for that, the crucial element is transparency, and that's what we use AI for transparency in trade finance market.
Okay. Yeah. And do you have a lot of competitors in this field?
Yes, I think there are a few companies trying to bring transparency to both trade finance in the AI space. I think the kind of models we do, kind of approaches, are so unique. I have no doubts that at some point they will be imitated. But yeah, for now we don't have people trying to create that market. There are people trying to be participant of the market, but not creating the market per se.
So you've already told which kind of problem do you solve, but what is the value not for just businesses, but for normal people?
Well, I think generally we are not a business to consumer business. Our clients will be large investors, institutional investors, professional investors, so not retail investors. The value to ordinary people comes from us facilitating creation of the market and from small companies being able to borrow cheaper than they're borrowing currently. Right now, if you are a large multinational company, you can easily access trade finance from a bank. There is probably a queue of banks trying to provide the services to you. If you are a small company, especially a small company in the emerging market, that will be difficult for you. Banks don't like to deal with small companies. It's too much hassle. Volumes are low. The compliance risk is high. So the banks are stepping away from the market. What we are trying to do is to ensure that the flow of trade is uninterrupted and the trade continues.
So I know that there are a lot of companies who really like to predict the risk for those who can invest money. But what kind of data do you use for that?
Well, the special thing about what we do is that we don't focus on predicting shares or bonds prices for large companies. We focus on predicting risks of small companies. For example, in the UK, we do full coverage of limited company universe. which means that we can give credit score to every single 3.5 million UK limited companies. In some countries like UK, you can say something from registration accounting data. In other countries, I just wouldn't trust accounting data at all. So there we rely on the transaction data. So we look at the history of transactions for each given company, history of transaction for similar companies. We look also at wider supply chain, how the companies in similar industries, similar location are paying or are being paid by the counterparties. And from that, our model builds a prediction of the likelihood that a given payment will be made on time.
Well, do you use machine learning only or other technologies of AI?
Yeah, so we use machine learning because the basic thing which we do is to provide transparency to investors. The banks who are doing this lending in the first place, they have huge credit departments with thousands of people underwriting these trade finance transactions. The investors wouldn't set up this. If you're a pension fund, you don't have time or capacity or skills to set up credit analysis for a large portfolio of small companies. We provide this analysis for them. And the way we do it is using machine learning. Obviously, it wouldn't be feasible for us, a startup company, to place a team of analysts in each country we operate. We operate globally. We currently have transactions from more than a dozen countries in our system right now. It wouldn't be feasible to set up separate credit analysis for each country. So instead of having humans do that, we have AI doing that. We use machine learning models, a suite of models ranging from relatively simple models to more involved graph neural network models.
Okay, can you please tell me more? What else do you use except machine learning?
Well, we have a number of models. Some of these models are being used right now as we speak by our clients. Other models are in development. There are things we are working on which I don't expect to be very useful sooner than in 2 years or even in 5 years. We've been just awarded a grant by the Singaporean Monetary Authority to develop a version of our model based on a quantum perceptron, so a quantum machine learning model. I don't think this model would actually outperform our normal neural networks in the next 2 or 3 years, but I think at some point it can be an interesting way to use quantum machines. We're actually also considering using quantum computing for portfolio optimization. In trade finance, portfolio optimization is quite different from your classical equity portfolio optimization because every decision is a 0-1 decision. You cannot decide to buy 2 of a given receivable or 5 on 4.5. You either take a receivable in your portfolio or you don't take it. The same kind of optimization arises with some other problems. For example, if you are managing a large real estate portfolio, you may decide to buy 20 high-rise office buildings in a town, but for any given building, you either buy this building or you don't. You cannot buy 3 of them, for example. So this binary portfolio optimization turns out to be quite a difficult computational problem. So now we are starting to apply a simulated quantum computer to solve this problem for us. And it works much better than both a classical branch and bound algorithm and then a physical quantum computer. So it's a joint project with a couple of research centers. And that I wouldn't be surprised to see implemented maybe in a year or so in our production systems.
Okay. And what about architecture of the product?
Well, architecture, we generally provide our main service to clients through the Azure cloud, and the same way we deliver our AI system. So we run on the cloud, both for training our models and for delivering the solution to the clients.
Thank you. That was very interesting. And the next question is about marketing. So which markets do you want to cover and where do you want to sell your product?
Well, we are a small company, set up less than 3 years ago, actually. We're based in London, and the main focus is on London. We started very early with an office in Singapore as well.
Is it an R&D office?
No, in Singapore it was mostly sales office, but now with this new grant, we'll have some R&D involved in Singapore as well.
So that means that you're targeting Asia, right?
We're targeting everything. In our portfolios, we have European, in the same portfolio, we have European, Middle Eastern, South African, Latin American, Southeast Asian exposures. Generally, the markets we target are all underbanked markets, and there are 2 types of underbanked markets right now. Some of them are very mature markets when you have a mature but distressed banking system. Southern Europe will be a typical example. And other markets are just outright underbanked because they're growing very quickly, and the financial sector is still developing. Indonesia, Southeast Asia in general will be a good example of that. We are active in both these kinds of markets as well as in developed markets. We also have a development office in Vietnam where we outsource some of our software development. I have a team of 5 researchers sitting in the University of Wrocław who help us with some aspects of our graph machine learning work. So yeah, we're pretty global. Probably the next step would be opening an office somewhere in North America. We have graduated from the Creative Destruction Lab in Montreal, which is a Canadian startup accelerator for AI companies. We haven't opened an office in Canada yet, but we might at some point.
Okay, and the last question. I think that there are a lot of people really want to start their own businesses in AI field. Maybe you can wish them something and they can avoid different, mistakes and use your experience.
Well, I think the important question is whether one starts from a problem, from a solution. I think a problem for some of the recently created AI businesses is that they are a solution in search of the problem. And that can be quite difficult, although in a quickly developing industry, I'm sure some of them will find an appropriate problem. We start very differently. We have a problem, actually a suite of problems, and then we just apply the best tools to solve them. To be honest, I was looking at, for example, neural networks for many years, and for the last 18 years, I would be starting a new project once every 3-5 years for a bank or for an asset manager, and I would think, is it the time to use neural networks? And the previous 5 times the answer would be no. But when I started this project a couple of years ago, the answer was suddenly yes. That was one of the tools we use, and that suddenly became an efficient tool.
So, as a conclusion, tell me if I'm wrong, but you can be a mathematician, but you definitely need to get an experience in industry if you really want to do a startup in
Well,
industry.
I wouldn't say that you need to have yourself experience in industry. I would say that you need to talk a lot to people with the experience in the industry, and whichever industry you apply your skills, you need to spend quite a bit of time understanding processes, understanding data, talking to people. The existing processes and approaches are probably not perfect. Chances are your model would outperform them and would improve on them. But you need to first understand how it's done currently, to understand the processes generating the data, to understand how the decisions are actually made. And after that, you can make your contribution once you have a good understanding of that.
Okay, so thank you very much.
All right,
It was
thank you.
very nice to
Pleasure.
meet you.